So can I put a fiver on stylish chap to win on the 2 o'clock?
33 to 1.
33 to 1. Thank you.
Good luck.
This is the way many people gamble on the result of a horse race or a football match at a betting shop like this one in central London. But in the last decade, there's been an explosion in what's known variously as in-game, in-play, in-running or live betting. Gambling while an event's taking place.
Bet365.com. It's all about the in-play. It's all about the next goal, the number of corners, the match goal.
Countries like France, Australia and Italy are trying to curb this form of betting. But what's wrong with it? I'm Simon Cox. I'm going on a journey to meet the gamblers trying to beat the system.
Part 1. Place your bets.
In order to understand in-game betting, I've come to Plumpton Racecourse in southern England on a beautiful sunny day. Plumpton weren't keen on me coming, so wouldn't let me record inside, and I couldn't use any commentary or sound from here either. Plumpton's reluctance is because of a practice that racing isn't keen to talk about, that's taking place in some of the hospitality boxes. Inside several, with curtains drawn, are professional gamblers. I was with Tom Kerr from the newspaper The Racing Post, who explained what they were doing.
If you are at the racecourse, you have the fastest pictures available. You can see it with your own eye, and you can take the feed from the broadcaster on track direct to you, so there's zero time delay. The people watching at home have a time delay. In the case of one of the channels at the races, that's about 6 or 7 seconds. Other channels have lesser, but that time delay is huge when one thing in a race can make all the difference. So for example, a horse goes over a fence and it falls. That horse can no longer win the race. If you're on track and you see that 6 seconds before people watching at home, theoretically, you can bet on this horse to lose a race when the horse has already lost the race.
So they're just exploiting the time delay in the TV feed, in the pictures?
Effectively so, yeah. That's exactly the reason why they want to be on course, because they have the fastest pictures. 1 second is an enormous advantage, so 6 seconds is even bigger.
But if you've only got a second or even a few, how can you place a bet that quickly? I saw for myself when one set of gamblers let me into a box. They run automated betting software on their computers that react to any change in information, making multiple bets at once, a bit like high-frequency trading in financial services. Tom Kerr says these traders place their wagers on the world's largest legal betting exchange, Betfair.
It's a peer-to-peer betting service, so instead of placing your bets with the high street bookmaker, which we all know, you place them against other punters. And what Betfair and other exchanges like that do is they merely facilitate the exchange process. They facilitate the two bets to be placed.
And is there much money to be made out of it?
It used to be that you could make huge sums of money. People were talking about making £400,000 a year just off one track. These days, apparently, it's a lot tougher. More people have cottoned on to the fact that you can make money by being on course, and more people off course have realised that they're not competing on a level playing field. So it is tougher, but the fact they're still there shows that there's still decent money to be made, and I think six-figure salaries might still be fairly common.
They're not doing anything illegal, but is it fair? Betfair themselves didn't want to be interviewed for the programme, but in the past they've said in-game bettors tend to be more experienced, that the TV delay has been made public, and that there's a warning on their website. So horse racing bettors try to get an edge by being at the event. But in some other sports, professional gamblers go one step further.
Part 2. Getting an edge.
Oh, good shot. Now, tennis is popular with gamblers trying to beat the time delay, and sadly, because of sports rights, we're not allowed to use any great moments from Roger Federer or Andy Murray, so you just have to put up with me, with my daughter Tallulah. And the reason that punters like tennis is because there's only two outcomes. I can either win this point, oh, there I go, 15 love to me, or I can lose it. And to get that information first, gambling syndicates employ people to go to the events for them. And they're known as scouts or spotters or courtsiders.
The purpose of us being there is that we can send it back over the internet faster than companies who pay for the data, and that is put through official channels, as it were. So us being there essentially is just a lot faster than someone like that can get the data.
Dan Dobson was a courtsider. He's hard to miss. Tall and affable in his early 20s, with the insouciance of youth, he was working for a gambling syndicate in Britain. He travelled round the world with a group of friends, all doing the same job. This is the first time he's spoken publicly about his work, because in January 2014 he achieved notoriety at the Australian Tennis Open when he became the first person ever to be arrested while courtsiding. So what was he up to?
You go onto court midday and you'd be told where to go. You just go to court number 1, for example. You then sit on court for as long as you were needed, sit there pressing the buttons, which were sewn into my trousers, relay the scores back to London. So you'd sit there, press 1 for Djokovic, 2 for Murray, as fast as you could, hoping you could beat any other competition, and then send those scores back to the guys in London.
When you're doing it, well, how do you have to operate?
Before you go, you know you're essentially breaking the ticket rules, and that's why you hide your gear, sew it into your trousers, stuff like that. There's spotters going around and you have to avoid them, and you know that if you get caught, essentially you're just going to be thrown out and you're breaking the ticket rules.
And when you said there's spotters going round, are they working for the tournament?
So there's spotters that work for the TIU, Tennis Integrity Unit, and they're employed all around the world at these major events. You get to know them because you'll see them looking around for you, and some of them are the daughters and the sons of the umpires. It's a bit of a game, cat and mouse. You'll see each other and kind of try and keep your head down, not get caught.
Dan may have been living the high life, but that definitely isn't the case for the gambling syndicate he worked for. They're based in this very unglamorous office storage warehouse in Battersea in South London. Upstairs, in a windowless room full of computers, TV monitors and a dartboard in the corner, the boss has an interesting little nugget to show me.
Steve, what are these in front of us?
Well, they're devices we used to attach to a mobile phone, and what they did was just help the person using them pressing the button, so they didn't have to press a button on the phone, they could press them on these devices.
This was the kind of device that Dan had sewn into his shorts to send back the information to the syndicate in London.
So they've got 4 buttons on the side, 2 of which the scouts used to use for sending points back when they were won by a specific player. It was that device that was in the pocket that Dan had.
The man showing it to me is Steve High. He used to work at the Betfair betting exchange. Now he's CEO of the Sporting Data Company that provides data and services to the gambling syndicate he started.
We have a system, specifically on tennis, we have a model which works out the probability of each player winning the match at any given time. So given a match situation, we can work how those odds are moving in real time. So we need information from the tennis match as soon as we can get it to determine what the best odds should be and hence where we should place our bets. So typically we will have one person, we used to have one person at the sporting event, at the tennis match in general, and one person back in the office working together to get the most accurate data we can from that match. And then using the model to assess where the bet should be, we'll place bets based on that.
So how would it work if you have them there and they press a button saying this player's just won this point? The person back here then might immediately change their strategy on the match.
Yes, we have an automated, or certainly we had an automated system where data would come in and then we would cancel any bets that we had in the market that we deemed were at the wrong price, and then we would place bets straight back into the market at what we deemed were now the correct price.
But in monetary terms, what difference could that mean for a position you might have?
It does vary tremendously. It really depends a lot on the individual trader who's making the decisions. But yes, it certainly could run into thousands. It rarely ran into tens of thousands, but it could run into thousands on an individual point.
In a tennis match, there are a lot of points, so potentially lots of money to be made. And let's not forget, in some countries, gambling winnings are tax-free. Steve's syndicate employed half a dozen courtsiders travelling the world. They could earn up to $80,000 a year with all their expenses paid. The potential gains from getting information first have led many other syndicates to employ courtsiders. How many? To give you an idea, here's a story that Steve tells about the most famous tennis tournament of all.
I've heard that at last year's Wimbledon, 75 people were sending information back or betting on their own there. So that would be the most, but, it does show that it's a competitive undertaking. The rewards have to be worth it, and yes, they are worth it for the people who get there fastest. But it's competitive. Not all of the 75 people at Wimbledon that day would have been making money, but the ones who were best at it came up with the best odds, had the fastest data, had the right people at the end making the trading decisions. Those people would have been the ones who made the lion's share of the money.
Wimbledon joined the growing list of people who said they didn't want to talk to us. As for Dan Dobson, his courtsiding career was brought to an abrupt end during a second-round match at the Australian Open in 2014.
I was sat there all day, sat on the same court in 45-degree heat, pretty uncomfortable. Towards the end of the day, walked off court and a cop grabbed my arms, put them in a pair of handcuffs, and that was kind of when I knew something was up.
So did they think that you were trying to influence the outcome of the match in some way?
Yeah, they thought we were having an impact on the integrity of the sport, essentially, so having some contact with the players, corrupting the sport in some way, but the truth is that's not what courtsiding is.
He was charged with trying to corrupt the betting outcome of an event under match-fixing legislation introduced by Victoria State, Australia's sporting capital. The charges against him were dropped later, causing some embarrassment to Victoria Police, and you've guessed it, they didn't want to talk about the case. In the highly unlikely event that he had been convicted, Dan faced a possible 10 years in jail. So would he do it again?
I have to say I would have, to be honest, because I do feel, not hard done by, but it was a case of bad luck. I think the fact this law was brought in just a year previously, and in this case it was applied completely the wrong way. So I would have definitely carried on. Opportunity of a lifetime, travelling the world for a year, courtsiding. So yeah, I have to say I would have.
He's no longer courtsiding, and his syndicate got rid of all the others doing it too. But there are plenty of other opportunities to do it. We looked at several Chinese websites that were advertising for courtsiders in the UK. Dan's case highlights the difficulties for the authorities and sport in trying to control people trying to gain an advantage during in-game betting.
Part 3. Calling the shots.
So, Alex, we've got in front of us on the screen, this is the end of a match, Nigeria-Argentina, a friendly in 2011.
Yep.
I'm watching this match with Alex Inglot from Sport Radar, the company that monitors 450 betting operators globally looking for suspicious betting patterns. It was almost the end of the match, and Alex puts up an idiot-proof graph on the TV screen, showing at the time there was still a lot of people betting on 5 goals in the game.
And this is betting that's going on during the game.
Exactly. So people are still betting deep into the 80th minute, confident that there is going to be 5 goals in this match. When logically someone, looking at a match would go, why are you so confident with like 2 minutes to go, with 1 minute to go, that there's still going to be another goal scored?
And surprise, surprise, there was another goal.
Surprise, surprise, our friend the referee here engineered enough time and dare I say, a reasonable enough situation to create a penalty opportunity to get that 5th goal.
This match was investigated by football's world governing body, FIFA, but the referee retired before he could be interviewed, although he firmly denies being involved in any match fixing. 1% of the football matches that Sport Radar observe each year are deemed as suspicious. It doesn't sound much, but that's around 300 to 400 games a year. Alex Inglot says virtually all of this betting is taking place in-game.
If you are going to fix a match, you don't want to give that information away, so you're not going to do it days in advance so that other people in the market can see. And second of all, you don't want to run the risk that someone like us is going to see this fix and give a heads up to the federation or the league and go, by the way, this match in 2 days' time is going to be fixed. And then your players or your referee is going to get isolated and captured and closed down. So you do it in play. These fixers are, they're hit and run people. They're not interested in the long game. So they want to leave it as last minute, make sure it can't be disrupted. And so the live market tends to be the best place for them to flourish.
And it's not just happening in football. Professor David Forrest is an economist from Liverpool University in northwest England who studied match fixing and corruption in sport and when it's most likely to occur.
The greatest dangers of corruption occur where you've got two things going on at the same time. One is that there is a very active betting market in Asia, such that you can place large stakes and win very large sums of money in the hundreds of thousands of euro. And then at the same time, in the corresponding player market, wages are very low. Now, this is the case, for example, in county cricket, where maybe $1 billion a year has been estimated by the industry to be bet in India on county games, whereas the total wage bill of the whole league in England is 20 million. So this great disparity between how much money the criminals can make from betting and how much players need the money.
Obviously playing from club and then going up to county level and signing your first contract, I was over the moon, and I was like a little schoolboy in a sweet shop. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. Like day in, day out, training, being with your friends as well. Anyone wants that. Like the environment was very good, and this playing something that you love doing, it was a massive achievement for me, and I enjoyed every minute of it.
Mervyn Westfield was barely into his career as a bowler for the English county cricket club Essex when he was recruited into a fixing scam run by the Pakistani international Danish Canaria.
I first met Danish at the age of 18, on my second year of my professional contract. He was a very bubbly person, everyone liked him in the dressing room, and yeah, he got on well with everyone. He was a role model for most of the people in our team. Basically, we was at his house and he asked if he could speak to me outside, and obviously I said, yeah, that's fine. And then that's when he started first talking about it. He said it's hard for a young player to get money nowadays in cricket, so that's how the conversation sort of started.
He was being asked to spot fix, which means manipulating one particular part of the game, such as the number of runs conceded in an over. In-game betting allows you to gamble not just on the result, but on dozens of other events, such as the number of runs in the first over or the total number of sixes. The retail bookmakers and betting exchanges won't allow you to gamble much on these events, but Asian bookmakers aren't as reticent. In Mervyn's case, he wouldn't have to lose the game, just underperform for one over and give away 12 runs.
Basically, we won that game, then we stayed in the changing room for a little bit, had a couple of beers, and we got back to the county ground, and because Danish lived next to me, he always gave me a lift home, obviously, because it was late, it was 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that. So his two friends was in the car as well, and they had a black bag and they just gave it to me with money in it, and I said, obviously I haven't done it. I didn't go for the amount of runs that I was meant to, but they said, no, that's fine, take it, it's yours.
Mervyn never spent the $9,000 he was given, which at the time was more than half his annual salary. He was later caught and became the first English cricketer to be convicted for spot fixing. He was jailed for 4 months and banned from cricket for 5 years. Danish Canaria was given a lifetime ban by the England and Wales Cricket Board. But spot fixing isn't the biggest concern for the integrity of sport. The real money to be made is in rigging the result of a game. So how do you fix a match?
Part 4. The Big Fix.
Rhys Knoll leaves for Oz. Good luck to Rhys on his move to Australia. Along with Joe, he's played a big part in the past couple of seasons for the Urchins.
This was an innocuous-sounding tweet in July 2013 about Rhys Knoll, a journeyman footballer in the 6th division of English football, who was looking to earn some extra money during the summer by playing in Australia. But at Sport Radar, Alex Inglot says it set alarm bells ringing.
We predicted that the matches were going to be fixed before the first game was played, based on the behaviour of these players in the past and based on the fact there was just a few of these suspicious players all going to one club. I mean, it would be a huge coincidence if they weren't going for that reason. And that's why we told the Australian authorities, even before a ball was kicked, that this could be suspicious. But as we started working with them, we gave them more information about what we expected the result to be based on the odds in the market.
4 English players had been recruited by the Southern Stars team in Melbourne in Australia's 2nd division. The police there began monitoring them, and Alex shows me some of the photos posted on their social media accounts of their lifestyle in the Southern Hemisphere.
They're going to the top bars in Australia, they're going on holidays to Bali, they're scuba diving trips. You've got pictures on their Instagrams of where they're living. I mean, these are really plush living conditions
they look
in Melbourne.
Very swishy apartments.
They are not cheap. And, you know, for players who are in the 6th division in Europe, this is way beyond their pay grade. So that was part of the equation. They also, the Victoria Police collected other evidence. They were using wiretaps and microphones in goalposts to try and record conversations that were occurring during the match to see if they could capture instructions and various things like that.
In September 2013, the 4 English players were arrested, along with 5 of their teammates and their head coach, in Australia's biggest ever match-fixing ring.
This morning, detectives from the Tirana Task Force, in collaboration with our Sporting Integrity Intelligence Unit, our SIIU, which is a Victoria Police unit, have today executed a range of search warrants across Melbourne.
The fixes weren't exactly subtle. In one game, Soccer Stars were supposed to lose 4-0. Rhys Knoll, one of the English players, was receiving text messages throughout the match. When his team were only 2-0 down and time was running out, he went behind the goal and yelled at the English goalkeeper Joe Woolley not to save any more shots. The English players were later found guilty and received small fines and were banned from football for up to 5 years. This may not seem much of a punishment, but Alex Inglot explains how even this small victory couldn't have happened in many other countries.
In this situation, the state of Victoria had just that year passed brand new legislation to try and capture these new integrity crimes in sport, and it was that legislation that allowed the prosecution to succeed. There are various countries around the world which don't have this specific match-fixing legislation, and what you find is that police or law enforcement agencies or even prosecutors have to try and cobble together something out of fraud or similar legislation that is not specifically designed for this kind of modern, new sporting issue. And as you might be aware, if prosecutors can't assure a prosecution, they sometimes decide that it's not worth the investment. That's the real problem.
The syndicate behind the match-fixing were never caught. Later, a notorious Singaporean fixer, Wilson Perumal, said he masterminded it. He began cooperating with the authorities in Europe after being caught several years ago. He's even written a book about his exploits. We contacted him, and although he didn't want to be interviewed, he told us that in-game betting is definitely an asset for fixers, and that corrupt syndicates have been profiting from in-game betting for a decade. Many of these are in Southeast Asia, where gambling is huge and illegal in nations like China. To give you an idea of just how big it is, on a televised Premier League game, around $5 to $10 billion will be bet. Professor David Forrest from Liverpool University has conducted research into corruption and match-fixing.
One case in Germany, a gang was found guilty of fixing 320 matches in 13 different countries. So there's a very large number of football matches involved. And this, of course, is very undesirable from the viewpoint of our dream that sport is an honest and upright sphere of society. But it's potentially commercially damaging because there's probably a tipping point after which people will think that events are being manufactured so regularly that they don't really believe the product and won't buy it anymore. Now, this led to, for example, in the late 90s, the collapse of the Chinese Football League, the Malaysian League, the Singapore League, the Taiwan Baseball League. They all collapsed because the public lost faith. In fact, football's never recovered in China. It has half the number of recreational players that it did in the 90s. Now, there are signs that maybe in Europe, in Italy, the sport is very close to the tipping point. Attendances are falling substantially, and some academic research has shown that they're falling more sharply at clubs which have been implicated in fixing. So I suppose the worry for football and also cricket, for example, is that if there are enough revelations, then eventually people will think this sport isn't for real, and there'll be a danger of a sudden collapse of the sport.
So what's the answer? You could ban in-game betting like some nations have done, but that's a pretty blunt tool, as there's nothing wrong with it. You could legalise gambling in nations like China, but that's some way off, if ever. And you could make it easier to get cross-border investigations and prosecutions for match fixing, as the UN's Office on Crime is trying to do. In my case, surprise, surprise, I lost my bet, and the house won. But for the more serious gamblers using betting exchanges, the house is irrelevant. They're pitting themselves against each other, and sports are struggling to know how best to respond. The lack of regulation in the illegal Asian markets and the huge sums being wagered means they can get the best odds and will continue to lure serious gamblers whose only interest is in making money. Does the House Always Win was presented by me, Simon Cox, and the producer was Anna Meisel.